Hello and welcome to another Talk to Stu with me, Stuart McGoo. This is the second video in my new series on frequently asked questions that I get on this channel, also known as Stu McGoo's FAQs. So this video is about the second most popular question that I get asked, which is I'm currently on employment support allowance. I've been told I may need to move over to universal credit. If I do, will I still be on the same rate? Will I still be in the same group? And will I have to go through the work capability assessment again? Now, before I get into answering these questions, as always, the usual YouTube plea for liking, sharing and subscribing. Obviously, you may not want to like, share and subscribe until you've watched a bit more of the video, but I'm just putting it out there, Okay, so yeah, let's get into it. So your unemployment support allowance, now referred to sometimes as legacy ESA, previously ESA, and you've heard that you may have to move over onto universal credit. You may have even received a letter in the post saying that you need to move over onto universal credit, and you're probably feeling a bit worried about that, which is understandable. It can be a bit of a stressful kind of confusing situation. So who's being asked to move over? Well, basically everybody at some point will be asked to move over onto universal credit from employment support allowance, and that migration process is ongoing. The government's final end date to move everybody over is 2029. However, they are trying to move things a bit quicker at the moment, so it may be that you receive notification that they want you to move over soon. That said, it may not be for a long time. The rollout of this is ongoing, and there's no hard and fast rules as to who's being selected, where and when and for what reason, or any of that. So what happens in that process? Well, the first thing is you will receive a letter telling you that you need to apply to universal credit by a certain date, otherwise your benefits may be stopped. Okay, so it's important that you begin the process of moving over by that date. Now, you might be panicking, thinking, well, you know, I can't do this myself. I need support with this. I need to go and find some support to do it. I might not be able to get that support within the time scale that they've given. Don't worry too much, because it is possible that you can get an extension if they know that you are getting professional support, or that there are other factors that might have a bearing on this as to why you might not be able to get it back in the given time frame. Now, quite often they're usually okay with granting those extensions as long as they know it's in process, and particularly if they know somebody's supporting you, because if you're getting support, it means at their end the administrative process is going to be a lot easier. They're not going to have to keep asking you for different documents that you may not have submitted at the time. If you're getting that one-to-one support from a professional, welfare benefits officer of some kind, maybe a disability rights advocate, something like that, social worker sometimes, you know, those kind of people will kind of take you through the form and, of course, all the evidence and everything that you have to submit. So they're usually quite willing to give an extension in those circumstances. As well as that, they've got very high volumes of people that they're processing, so sometimes a bit of an extension isn't too much of an issue for them as well. So don't be afraid to phone up and ask. And certainly if you are seeking one-to-one support, most services that provide that kind of support have got a waiting list, so do get on that as soon as you get the letter. Do also be aware that those letters are usually sent out and it might be a week or so from the date of it being sent out till you receive it, so that might cut down the time that you have to get on the case, as it were, from the date of that letter when it was sent out. So that can reduce that time. So as soon as it comes through, don't delay, even if you're feeling very anxious about it and things like that. Do try and get that support as much as possible. Obviously, there are people with certain levels of anxiety who are going to find that tricky to do on their own. So that begins the process, and if you've got support, even better. The process itself is essentially applying for universal credit and just making it very clear on your application where you currently are, what the current rates you're on, and so on and so forth. Okay, a lot of that information they may have at the DWP, but that doesn't mean it's shared between the two systems, because they can often be in different places in the country. And indeed, there are sort of rules about sharing data and things like that due to GDPR and whatnot, and systems and processes. So don't be afraid to tell them everything again and provide them all the same evidence again when you do that. Now, I have done a video on how to apply for universal credit, which is available on my channel, and I'll pop a link to it in the comments. The biggest challenge for moving on to universal credit is, of course, that it is online, whereas employment support allowance, generally speaking, is a paper-based application. So if you are somebody who isn't digitally included, then you might find it difficult to do that application in the first instance, and indeed manage your universal credit account moving forward. Now, in the history of online things, it's, I would say, not that difficult to interact with, but that's easy for me to say because I'm obviously very good with computers and stuff like that. I've produced these videos and whatnot. Obviously, it's not the best quality in the world, but I can still do it. So my perspective on whether or not these things are challenging might be difficult, but from my experience, I found it to actually be not too difficult a thing to set up in the first place. And once you've got it set up, if you're the sort of person who uses a smartphone and all that kind of thing, you'll probably find it's not too difficult to manage just using your smartphone. However, if you've got visual impairments, cognitive issues, things like that might make it more difficult for you to do that process, then again, it is something that you will need to get support with. And I tend to find even local libraries are quite well placed to supporting people to sign up to universal credit these days, as they've had to step up and do that. But do check, as I say, to see if there's support that you can get with that. I will pop the Turn to Us advice finder in the description below, so link through to that, and that will hopefully show you if there's any support in your available area. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's for somebody that you're supporting who needs help with that kind of thing. Now, once you've done all of that, the big question, do I still get the same rate? Well, yes, you do. So if you are currently, whatever rate you are currently on will carry over. You will get what's known as transitional protection, which will mean that the rate that you are getting paid now will be the same when you move over to universal credit. Also covered under transitional protection rules is the group that you are in. So, as we all know, with employment support allowance and universal credit, you have to go through a work capability assessment if you are deemed unfit to work for a extended period. When you've gone through the work capability assessment process, you are placed under ESA into either the work-related activity group or to the support group. Under universal credit and the out-of-work sickness premium, as it's called, under universal credit, you will be transitioned over and placed in the similar group or the equivalent group under universal credit, which is either the limited capability for work group or the limited capability to work for work-related activity group. Okay, so the first group, the limited capability for work group, is equivalent to the work-related activity group, and the limited capability for work-related activity group is equivalent to the support group. So you should transition over from one to the other. Apologies for bashing the mic if that came through. And when you move over, assuming that you do not have one due to happen anyway, you should not have to go through a work capability assessment again. Okay. Now, the only time that you will have to do a work capability assessment again is if it was already planned that you were to have a review at some point in the near future. So if you were told in April 2024 you will your work capability assessment will need to be redone, then if you move over onto universal credit before then that will happen as normal. Obviously, if the date that they give you is close to that date, then you'll have to go through the process at the same time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to have to do the work capability assessment again, unless, as I say, you've been told that you will have to do it again at some point in the future. It may be that if you're in the support group, that is a permanent placement in that group, and that you won't need to have a review at all, or indeed you should not. So, what else do you need to know about the move over? So, one of the things that may come up is that as you move over onto universal credit, if you are in the work-related activity group and moved into the limited capability for work group, you should be provided with a job coach or work coach. And indeed, you may be provided with a job coach or work coach if you're in the support group and then move into the equivalent, but they may take a much lighter touch of just confirming some things with you and then leaving you for the time being, if not for quite some time. If you are, however, in the work-related activity group, it is deemed that you could do some activity that will get you back into work or help prepare you to going back into work in the future. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you then move into the limited capability for work group, you have got access to a lot more support to be able to try and move you in that direction. Some people are concerned about this, of course, because it may put undue pressure on people that may not be in the right time of their life to do that. However, the idea behind the system is it should be shaped around you and your needs and what you're able to do. So it might be that they're looking at volunteering work with maybe a view to move into part-time work. It might be they look at working from home. It might be they look at retraining, all that sort of thing. And it might be just for a few hours a week rather than, you know, a full-time job. So don't panic if that ends up being the case. More often than not, the majority of people get a regime applied to them that is suitable for them. There are, of course, cases where people don't have a regime applied to them that is suitable for them, and again, this is another reason why you need support to do this, so that you can hopefully be placed with the right person, and then if there are issues that need to be sorted out, you could get the right advice on what you should be saying to those people. Now, the other thing to bear in mind with this is that you, when you move over, the amount of money that you get under employment support allowance should be the same under universal credit. However, if the amount of universal credit you are paid is less than the original, then you'll get the transitional protection top up to bring it up to the amount that you were originally being paid. Okay, so the lion's share will be the universal credit, and then there will be that top up to bring you up to the level you were on previously. Now, what's interesting about this is that employment support allowance and universal credit are both linked to inflation, and so the government implies yearly inflationary increases to those benefits, and the amount increases. Now, the amount of inflationary increase that's applied varies and isn't set exactly in line with inflation. This year we had a 10.1% inflationary increase, but inflation around the time was around 14%, so it doesn't necessarily match up anyway. But what's important about this is the transitional amount, that little top up that's put to bring you up to that amount, that's not linked to inflation. So over time, when you've moved over, you will see your employment allowance go down. Now, it won't be overnight, of course, it will be year on year. So over time, you will be on a bit less than what you are on now, comparatively, because the benefit won't increase in line with the inflationary increases that are applied to everybody on universal credit. That will stay the same. So, as I say, over time, you will be a bit worse off. That isn't necessarily the worst news in the world, because there are other premiums and things that under universal credit that you may have not had access to before, which might kick in. So, for example, if you're in a household and you're being assessed as a household under universal credit and you're on employment support allowance separately, it might be that there are carers premiums, for example, that are applied if a husband is looking after a wife or a wife is looking after a husband that's on employment support allowance. They're on a low income, they're providing care. There might be a carers premium applied to that, and that even may be in addition to carers allowance if that person's claiming that as well. So it's worth checking out these things and not panicking too much when that comes through, because although over time you might be worse off, it might be that there are other things that kick in as well. Now, as I've said before, part of the getting one support is getting that benefits assessment. Everybody's circumstances are different, so I can't give one hard and fast, this rule applies to anyone. And equally, somebody might be watching this video at a different time to when I've made it, which is why I don't really talk about exact rates of benefit payments that people get in these videos, because that can change as well. So it's important that you get a one-to-one benefits assessment, but if you can't get the one-to-one benefits assessment and you're able to, there is below a link to the Turn to Us benefits calculator. There are various benefits calculators on the web. This is just the one I like to link to. So have a look at that, and you can put all of your details in there, like I say, if you're able to, and that will tell you kind of what you should expect to receive under universal credit. So just make sure you put all the particulars in and that you're quite honest about it. You know, there are often things that we don't expect that we could receive that are tucked away, and benefits calculators like that, or getting a one-to-one benefits assessment, should give you a better idea of what you may or may not be eligible for. Okay, so thank you for listening to this video. I've finally come to the end. Apologies if it was a bit of a waffle. It's a very complicated system, and indeed there are further changes happening to the out of work sickness element of universal credit and employment support allowance going on over the next couple of years, including things like the scrapping of the work capability assessment and different use of job coaches and things like that, which are all very complicated. Now, I cover things like this in all my other videos, and well, not all of them, but in a lot of my other videos, and also I do every Tuesday, not every Tuesday, every month, on the first Tuesday of every month at 7 PM here on YouTube, you can tune into me doing a live Q&A session. So please drop in for that. You'll be able to pose your questions, whatever they are, to me, and I'll answer them as I go. So yeah, that can be quite good to also meet other people in the chat who are in a similar position to yourself. So it's, you know, a nice supportive environment if people are going through a difficult time and having a lot of worries. So yes, please do join us for that. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if it was useful. And I'm going to go and drink a lot of water because my mouth is on fire from all the talking. But then I love the sound of my own voice. So, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. Not for me anyway. Anyway, if you did stick to the end, thank you for that. And yeah, hopefully I will see you again for further videos in the future. Take care.